Hello, guys. So, I have a question for you. What do you think a biblical response to the coronavirus is? Or to put it into a little bit more of a broad context for you guys, what do you think our proper response to crises are in general? Because the deal is that all of us will face different kinds of crises in our lives. Sometimes the crises we face are on more of a personal level and they're a little bit more of a small scale thing. But sometimes the crises we face are a lot bigger, a lot more serious. Sometimes there's a social crisis that we face. Sometimes there's national crises, and sometimes there's even global crises, like what we're seeing with like the coronavirus. So, how do you think as Christians we ought to respond to these situations? How would God want us to respond, and what is the biblical way that we ought to respond to it? So, what I'd like to do is I'd like to share a few of my own personal thoughts on this, but then I also want to make this a post for us to have some conversation off of. I'd love for you guys to go ahead and put comments down in the comment section and everything. Parents, I would love for you guys to also feel free to make comments. And students, I want you to be talking to your parents about these questions as well. Okay? So here's a couple of my own personal thoughts though. First of all, that God is sovereignly in control. He's sovereignly in control no matter how big the crisis is, no matter how devastating it seems. God is still bigger and he is still in control of that situation. In Psalms 33:11, we read, it says, "But the Lord's plans stand firm forever. His intentions can never be shaken." So again, like I said, the coronavirus cannot shake God's plans. Is that we can trust the goodness of God. So in Romans 8:28, we read, it says, "And we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God, for those who are called according to his purpose." And now this is a verse that I remember my dad personally clung to this in one of his crises in life whenever he was facing cancer. And the concept behind it is that if we love God and we're loving God through the situation that we're in, through the crisis we're facing, we can trust that he's going to work it together for our good, for our benefit. And also understanding that he's the one who has permitted us to be in this situation. Even if it's an uncomfortable situation, he has sovereignly permitted us to be in that situation. So knowing that he has allowed it and knowing that he is a good God who has our best interest, we can trust him through that situation. Now, there's a key thing that we need to understand from this verse, and that is that it says, "For the good of those who love him." And so a lot of times when we read that word good, we're thinking from a temporary, kind of like an earthly based kind of a concept. And when I say earthly based, I mean like, here on this earth, on this planet we're living on right now, everything is temporary. Stuff just passes away. People die and things, relationships end, and there's this temporariness to the things that are in this world. But what we're seeing in this verse is that God's not functioning on a temporary basis. He's not thinking about things the way we think about things. We think, what is good for me in this moment? What is best for me in this moment? But God is functioning from the eternal perspective, from that sovereign perspective. And so he's seeking to give us what is best for us, what is really, truly good for us from that eternal perspective. So we need to be patient with God and trust him with those things. Another one is understanding that God does see us. He sees us and he knows what we are going through in our lives. Psalms 33:13-14 says, "The Lord looks down from heaven and he sees the whole human race. From his throne he observes all who live on the earth." And so he knows what kind of crisis you're going through in your personal life. If it's a thing that your whole family is going through, he knows and sees what's going on in your household. He sees what's happening on the local level in our communities, and also he knows what's happening on the national and global level. God knows knows all these things and He is in control. So we can rest in that, knowing that He is a good God who understands what we're going through. Another verse I wanted to read to you guys is from Romans 8:18 through 21. It says, "Yet what we suffer now is nothing compared to the future glory He will reveal to us later. For all creation is waiting eagerly for that future day when God will reveal who His children really are. Against its will, all creation was subjected to God's curse. But with eager hope, the creation looks forward to the day when it will join God's children in glorious freedom from death and decay. We too wait with eager hope for the day when God will give us our full rights as His adopted children, including the new bodies He has promised us. We were given this hope when we were saved." And so what this verse is showing us is, well, first of all, the suffering we face in this life right now, this temporary suffering, is nothing compared to the future glory which we have through Christ. But there's some other things that we see in here. We see that the brokenness that this world is facing was not God's intended design for the world, and it's not where things are going to end. You know, this world may end, but then there is a eternity in the future. There is a redemption, a work of redemption and restoration God is doing even in the midst of this world right now, where He's going to, all the brokenness will be done away with and things will be made right one day. He will make things right again. And so that's why it's saying that the earth is waiting for that day when God will reveal His full glory, and when He will restore us as His children back to what we were originally intended to be, as those caretakers who were made in His image, who will take care of the world by His grace, in His image, and a reflection of love and worship to Him. And so, this world will not be filled with death and decay all the time. God is establishing a future kingdom where that will be done away with. And same with the brokenness that we face in our own relationships and in our own bodies. That will be done away with one day as well. So that's a future hope that we have that is, again, rooted in the eternal God. So it's not something that will fade away, but it's something that once we are there, it's going to last the whole entire time. We don't have to worry about it from that point on. Then there are a few principles that I want to give you guys that are going to be points of application. So whenever you're asking yourself this question, how should I respond to the coronavirus, or how should I respond to this crisis in my life? I want you to keep these things in your mind. Is your reaction being done for His glory? So in 1 Corinthians 10:31, it says, "Whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, however you choose to respond to coronavirus, do it to the glory of God." So there's several ways you can respond to it, but whichever way you're choosing to respond, ask yourself, am I glorifying God through the choice I'm making right now? And then another question that I want you guys to ask is, am I loving others through the choice I'm making right now? And so Philippians 2:4 says, "Each of you should not consider your own interest, but also the interests of others." So when you're thinking through, do I go to work? Do I not go to work? Do I go to the coffee shop and hang out with a bunch of people right now? Or do I not go to the coffee shop and hang out with a bunch of people right now? For those of you who maybe you don't have school and your friends want to go hang out, they want to have a party, do you go and party or do you not go and party? Well, first, are you worshiping God through the situation, through your choice? Are you doing it for His glory? And are you loving others through the choice that you've made? Okay, and it goes the same with the way that you talk about coronavirus and the way that you talk about other people's choices and how they've chosen to respond to the disease or whatever crisis they're going through. Are you loving them through that situation, glorifying God in the way that you're reacting to their choices, or is what you're doing something that is more self-conceited and more based in your own pride or sense of arrogance or whatever it is. So those are just a few challenges I have for you guys. I also have a video link posted below and everything. It's to a video by John Piper. He goes a little bit more in depth on like how can we respond to this crisis, but also how should we understand God in the midst of a crisis like the coronavirus. And like I said at the beginning of the video, I want you guys to ask questions, make comments, make the different kinds of posts and stuff. Kids, ask your parents the question, what do you believe the biblical response to a crisis like coronavirus is? Okay, look forward to hearing your replies and responses. I'm keeping you guys in prayer and everything. Can't wait to see you all again. God bless, and I'll talk to you all later.